Welcome to Practice Court. My name is Wesley Whitehouse, and I'm a former junior Wimbledon number one and ATP player to a player. I've beaten and played some of the best players in the world. I currently live in New Zealand, in Auckland, and I'd like to introduce my coach, Mike, and co-host. Hey, Mike.
Hey, buddy, how are you? I mean, that's
Good.
pretty dramatic, you know? Hey, we're going to have fun doing this. We're inviting all you folks to come out to Practice Court, which is our podcast. And I'm Mike VanZutphen, USPTA Master Pro, and I'm in the Hall of Fame, and I've coached ATP and WTA players, and I'm still coaching some WTA players as well. So it's all good. And I'm from Arizona, where you sweat a lot, because it's hot here. So
Just
we're
a
gonna,
little bit, eh?
yeah, it gets a little warm, you know what I mean? So anyway, the good thing is we're gonna be covering a gamut, a whole bunch of areas for player development and players getting better through either the mental game, the physical. Wes, I know we talked about this before, but I would love for you to talk a little bit about the player development side and why that's so important for players to get their skills good, but also, enhance performance. So can you go over a little bit of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I was just going to say, with everyone coming to practice court, we're going to take you on a journey, and this journey is going to last. We're going to go in depth on so much stuff, and we want to take you down this road with us. And so we'd love you to subscribe to it. And yeah, you were talking about player development and stroke production and how important that is. Um, for you, when you and I got together, Mike, one of the things that really stuck with me was understanding that if I can manage the right strokes and if I have great strokes or mechanics, then my ability to perform those skills goes up dramatically and gives myself the best chance at success. And once I understood that, it took a lot of pressure off me. And so I think stroke production is a key element for players, especially those that want to, whether it's college or to take their level further, is that really helps when you have a great level of mechanics, because under pressure, that's the first thing that tends to go.
Yeah, I really agree with you on that one, Wes. And sometimes I think that coaches aren't always on the same page as the player. So I think that unity in personal development enhances the performance of the player, but also their learning curve is much faster when the coach and the player are right on the same target in terms of an individual skill, like a volley or a forehand ground stroke or a serve. That way they end up performing better because they know what the coach wants, and that information is clear in their mind on what they need to do.
Absolutely. I mean, we did that really well. I thought, that was a really great thing when you and I got on the same page as far as looking when we did an evaluation. And I think that's a key thing that coaches sometimes miss out on is evaluation. Because in order to understand these things, you need to know where the player's at and be able to diagnose what they need in order to improve that skill set. And we did that really well. So I thought it was a huge thing. I agree with you 100%. I think it helps you and the coach develop also a great relationship in your understanding.
Yeah, I do think that sometimes how you communicate that information and how the player receives the information, whether it's brought to you visually and they see it and they go, yeah, I see that. Can I produce that mechanic? Or you have to go through a progression or a series of steps that really help them get the feel, because most of us learn visually, kinesthetically. So I feel it, so I know how to mechanically do the skill, and
Yeah,
that enhances the learning curve. That's what I see.
absolutely. And while we're talking about that, I wanted to ask you, Mike, is obviously we've just talked about a bit of player development and stroke production. So the next thing I'd like to ask you is having a tennis pathway or a pathway for players. Some people kind of think it's the same thing. So player development and player tennis pathway are the same thing. Could you share a little bit about how you see that and then what the steps are with that?
Absolutely. I just think what happens individually, you might have a specific deficit or lack of a particular skill. Stroke production is the actual fixing of the skill where you say, okay, I want this skill to be better. And now what happens is what developmental steps are implemented so that this player over a period of, it might be 3 months, 2 months, or however long it might be, though that pathway is usually put together in a way that the player develops confidence, directional correctness, a balance point with the weight, so that they transfer
Absolutely.
their weight well. How many hours did we do with you just on ground stroke, like on the forehand ground stroke daily? I mean, you were constant, you were out there, man, my feet are burning, coach. Damn, it's hot here.
Yeah, I don't think it's a casual thing once or twice a week. No, definitely not. I definitely agree with you as far as that goes, and I also think that it helps players actually see where they're going as well. That I've got this part right, and the progression of that allows me to get to this. And once you understand that, everything becomes a lot easier, I think, moving down the track with other areas that you address.
Yeah. I
That
have a
was that would
funny
be my
story. You remember this story about you and Nadari at the volley? I said, okay, this is going to be a 15-minute volley drill, but if you miss, I have to add 5 minutes to the drill.
I'm
No.
still scarred from that, right? I still
Oh
have
my.
emotional scarring from that. We did the drill for an hour and a half. In fact, actually, hour and 45 minutes. I couldn't walk the next day. It was brutal.
Yeah, I only had one requirement, don't miss. That added the 5 minutes.
You said do not hit it in the tape. You can miss
Yeah.
anywhere else, just don't hit it in the net. That is correct. I was going to say, along with that is, with player development, every player is different. And sometimes people need to recognize that as well. Some people learn faster than others in different areas. I know that was the one question you always posed to me. Did you want to learn fast or slow, Whitehouse? Which one did you want to learn? I tried to pick the fast route, Mike. Clearly on that day I didn't. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of funny when we see it sometimes because you're developing consistency along with proficiency. Like, am I proficient at
absolutely.
executing the shot? And can I not make a mistake? So it develops the concentration, exactly what happens in a tennis match. You can't just go off to, walk about and think you're going to play great tennis and your brain's all over the show about eating dinner or something, so
Hopefully it's not there.
yeah,
Hopefully.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
I wanted to touch also on the mental game. Now, do you want to let us know what your acronym is for the mental game?
Well, I came up with this positive mental state, okay, which is really what, I said, okay, what's your positive mental state? How are you managing under these stressful conditions? So I use the term, how's your PMS? My wife probably didn't like that term, but, but anyway, it means positive mental state, and so sometimes we don't have the right behavior in relationship to the state of mind that we're in, and that information, when a player dictates to you, they say these nonverbal things in a tennis match with their shoulders down, their rackets down. Oh man, I missed that shot, So mentally, there's a lot of nonverbal language going on, and that is a byproduct of how you've handled your environment or the situation. get, especially if you're in a game and all of a sudden you go out to lunch and then you go, I hope I can still beat this guy. So, but you could probably comment on that match. I probably didn't want to stop yelling at you for about, I don't know, an hour and a half.
That is, we won't bore people with how long you yelled at me for, but I learned really fast after that. You know, I think one of the things that come into play with a mental game is that people don't actually tie in is the player development stroke production part of it. Because that allows my mental state and confidence and ability when I'm out there playing pressure level games to know that I can perform the skill under pressure and it's not going to break.
Yeah.
And so that allows that ability to help my positive mental state because I've done it a million times. And so it allows me. So in those pressure situations, I know when we did it and when I was out there in big matches against some great players, I knew I had the ability to execute the shot because we'd done it that many times. I had confidence in my ability to produce those shots.
Yeah, you did that in your matches. And really, that's where you see players, we call that emotional traps. So they fall into a pit or a trap because they don't have that confidence. And then performance goes down in terms of how they're playing the real match, and they're not confident in executing, even if they're behind or ahead. And you sort of let go of that, which was why your performance and you climbed the ladder so quickly on the professional rankings, so and beat so many really top level players because you weren't worried about outcome. You were worried about, can I execute the shot and do what we did in our practice? And then it just becomes second nature to you.
Absolutely. And just guys, want to encourage you guys to please subscribe to the channel. We'd love to take you on this journey with us. We're really going to dive in deep. The last thing I wanted to say about that segment or tidbit that we're going to give is this area also applies to parental pressure that gets applied to kids based off of an outcome that needs to happen. And so they focus on the wrong things. And that's something, guys, we're going to address in our future episodes. We're going to go a bit more deeper into that, what's going to happen there, how that happens, and what we see a lot of the time all around the world, all the time with parents and kids. So we're going to dive a bit more into that.
Well, I have a question for you as well, Wes. After you beat Safin when he was number one in the world in the first set, and he goes to the sideline and starts breaking his rackets, it seemed to me he was a little bit upset. I don't know about you, but I
He
think he was
was.
sort of pissed off.
He
And
was.
he couldn't manage that. And then they had to call the tournament director and everybody to calm him down. And the umpire wanted to kick him out of the match, but that's because you were kicking his butt, you know?
Well, I mean, I think with such a great, he's such a great player, firstly, respect of such a great athlete and
Yeah.
talented player. And that day, it's easier when you don't, talking about pressure, I had no pressure there. I had everything to gain and nothing to lose. And so the game plan was definitely to apply pressure and to make him feel as much pressure as possible. And so at the top level, playing against players like that, when we're looking at player performance and especially at a professional level, I think that that is an element that I actually really like. I like to see players being put under pressure because a lot of the time, and I think that's what the top players do, is they take their opportunities so well in matches and they apply pressure, and that just creates more pressure, which forces players that are not necessarily as skilled for things to break or to maybe overplay or do things like that. And then that causes the unforced error ratio to go up.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And that's a byproduct of the skill that they have. Some coaches might say to the player, listen, I don't want you to play one dimensional. or just play from the backcourt. And I need you to be more aggressive, attack, come to net more, and then play in the front court. And that player's front court skills, the volleys, or maybe their approach shot, they're not as confident in that short ball or the volley. So they're less likely to implement that tactic that the coach might have said, hey, look, if we can do this, we can really put pressure on a player. And then they'll
Absolutely.
perform poorly because of the influence of the strategy or the tactic within the framework of that match. And I mean, you can see it all the time in the women's game where most of them just want to play at the back and they're one dimensional and they just want to hit winners. So the recent match, which I mentioned to you before, is Sinner and Alcaraz, you know,
Mm.
and Sinner just recently beat him. And that match was pretty dramatic where Sinner came to net a whole bunch in the match. And just, I mean, I think Alcaraz was in shock, you know?
Mm.
So he
Yeah.
didn't play him in the same fashion as he did before. Changed the tactic and look at the outcome went in Sinner's favor. So, you know, I think that's in the professional game, that player says, geez, I'm willing to do this and I have the skill to back it up. Now,
Yep.
sometimes they don't. I think a lot of players just don't work on it, you know, and they don't have that skill.
Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. I also think that while we're on that subject, just players, recreational players, also for them out there, just wanted to mention this is they look at these guys on TV and what they see is not all, and their understanding is not always what's reality. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but people that I've worked with have totally gone, oh, like I asked them, so where do the players hit the ball in the court? Is it really close to the line? And I've asked them, what percentage of the players hit the ball within, this area of the court? And they'll tell me every time within, you would like 6-inch window from either side of the line and the baseline. And I'm like, that's not true. That's just not true. And so their perspective when they're watching, they see all these great shots and they also don't recognize of how well players use their skills, and it's the ball before that gave them the put away,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
the
yeah, for
two
sure.
shots prior to that that have got them into that positional state where they can actually do something. And
Yeah.
so once again, guys, we want you to subscribe to the channel. We want to talk more about these things and actually have your guys' feedback and questions from you guys so that we can answer them and to the best of our ability. So, Mike, one of the questions I also would like to ask you is a common question that I get asked all the time is it goes under what we call here at practice called player toolbox. And in the player toolbox, it's with tension. Like I find like the common issue that I get asked always is what's the right tension to put in my racket? I don't know what to, and could you just maybe talk a little bit about how that really affects not just the recreational player, but what happens from a professional level?
Oh, yeah. You know, this is the absolute misunderstood characteristic in player performance. And, you know, I have a little story about the stringer at Survington because, you know, you were getting ready to play this tournament prior to Wimbledon, you know, and we were at the tournament thing and I had to have your racket redone. And they don't, like, coaches don't usually carry their own stringer. So they have
Mm-hmm.
a stringer at the tournament. And this guy did your racket. And I was like, holy cow, are you kidding me? You did, like, I measured the tension afterwards and I said, this is a joke. I said, we just
Mm.
paid you, you know, and then I made him do the racket again. And then he gave it back to me. And then the same thing happened. I come back to the guy and I said, I measured the tension and the damn guy, I said, did you understand me the first time? Did you? I said, you can't make this mistake like this. I was really pissed off. And then what I did is I actually had the guy check the stringer to see if the gauge was set correctly on the stringer, because I said either this guy's really bad at doing the racket, or his gauge, his stringer that he's using isn't functioning right.
Yeah.
Had him do the damn racket again. Still didn't. Still was wrong. And then I went to the tournament deck director and I yelled at that guy. I said, "You got to be kidding me! This guy's a dodo. He shouldn't be stringing rackets." So you know ended up, I got a different stringer to get the racket done correctly. And I stood there and watched him pull the strings so that the way he did the racket, the tension was going to come out correctly.
Yeah.
So most of us as recreational players, all we know is there's strings in the racket. And we go, wow, I'm glad there's strings in there.
Yeah.
We we have no idea about how the damn tension works. And it might feel better if we had it strung at a looser tension, for more power, and tighter if we needed more control. And that usually happens due to the temperature outside, the humidity, the altitude, and how the racket is balanced, either in the head heavy,
Yeah.
in the shaft or in the handle. So yeah, that becomes critical. And I don't think the recreational player just goes, well, I'm just happy there's damn strings in there. Wow,
Yeah.
that's good. They
And I
don't,
think,
yeah, they don't
I was
know.
going to say, I think why we're touching it on for the recreational player and why it's important is for the recreational player out there, when they are getting their racket strung, is it's injury prevention as well, and using the
Oh,
right tools, toolbox, having the right tools in the toolbox help the recreational player in so many different ways, which we're also going to dive into. So please subscribe, guys. It's going to be not just about strings and grips and shoes and aids that will help you guys tremendously. So I think the recreational player doesn't, thinks, oh, well, that only matters for the pros, but essentially it really helps with injury prevention as well for players at the recreational level.
oh, for sure. And then a too tight a racket, you're going to get tennis elbow.
Yeah,
The grip size is really critical. And the type of, like, a lot of the pros do overwraps on a racket, and the reason is they get a little more cushion, or it enhances the grip slippage so it
yeah,
doesn't slip when they misstrike it. And a recreational player is not going to hit it in the middle all the time, so they're going
sure.
to get more torque in the racket this way as they strike the ball. And that's why some go fast and some go slower, or they can hit a ball with more spin,
Yeah,
or less spin, and they can manage it with the racket head. The head size, 110 versus 100. Aren't you using a 98 head size, Wes? Is that
I use a 95 currently.
95? Now that's the smallest head size they've got right now that you'd see out there. So your window, your sweet spot's pretty right on, like it's pretty small
Yeah,
racket area. But the recreational player's not going to hit that. I mean, if they hit it there, they're like, wow, look at that shot. It went fast, like that. They would be excited for something that good, but they don't do that consistently. So,
sure.
again, the grip size will help the torque in the racket to prevent the racket from twisting in the hand, and people getting a more solid strike, even though they
Right.
didn't hit it right in the honeypot.
Sure.
So that
Absolutely.
that's what we see is the difference, I think. So I think that's a tremendous subject that we can delve into, because like you, we were very meticulous about how it was put together, the balance of the racket,
Yeah.
everything from that standpoint of the frame. So performance was optimized.
Yeah.
That way you always had it right on the money.
Yeah. Absolutely. Kind of like your golf game, hey, Mark?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I beg for the ball to hit in the middle. Please, please go straight. Yeah, that's true. Kind of like my golf
So
game.
I think, just in closing, what I'd like to say is to all those watching, um, we'd really love you guys to subscribe. We have a lot more info, and we really want to make this a great journey that we go on with you guys and take you through the insights of all these things, including having you guys be able to put videos, send videos to us, and we'll break some stuff down for you and stuff like that. And we want to address everything and as much as we can on this journey so that we can better educate people out there so that people can understand and have a diagnosis and understanding and knowledge of this great game that I've had the privilege of being able to play and coach. And Mike, obviously, you've played and coached as well. And so we would love you guys to subscribe. I wanted to just say, Mike, it's always a pleasure. What a privilege to be on here with you and doing this with your coach. You know, it's not too many people that get to do this with their coach and reminisce sometimes on the stories. So, yeah, we're definitely going to give you insights into all that stuff. So, for now, this is us from the practice court. Take care, guys. Till next time.